Now there's a place we all know well, they call it the land down under. Started up the old Kingswood with a clap of thunder. Hit the roads wherever they go, winding through Australia. With my camera in my hand, I am the overlander. Now pass the bottle round, boys, don't you let it stand there. For tonight we drink the health of every overlander. I drive from out back to the coast, it's there I meet the locals. Film their faces, hear their yarns and capture all their stories. Then I'm back upon the road in search of places grander. For that's the way I live my life, a travelling overlander. Now pass the bottle round, boys, don't you let it stand there. For tonight we drink the health of every overlander. Now pass the bottle round, boys, don't you let it stand there. For tonight we drink the health of every overlander.
G'day, I'm the Overlander and I want to show you my country, Australia. And the best way to do this is to introduce you to its people. I'm taking a road trip and I want to capture the essence of each location I visit by meeting a local and asking them why they choose to live where they do. Each of the people I interview will have never been in front of a camera before. They're just everyday, real Aussie characters. I'm starting my journey in Melbourne, the capital of Victoria, and will travel right up the east coast, chasing the sun. After Israel, Australia is the most culturally diverse country in the world. It is made up of over 120 different ethnic groups. And no better place to see this all work is at Melbourne's Queen Victoria Markets. It's also a good place to pick up some bargains and some fine food. Talking of food, I doubt there would be many other places in the world where you can sample the fare of so many different countries as in Melbourne. Tonight I'm dining at a restaurant with an Aussie flavour, where you can eat such unusual dishes as kangaroo, crocodile or possum. I'm tucking into a bit of dead roo. Melburnians see themselves as living in the cultural centre of Australia, and a reflection of this can be seen in the strong local music scene. Every night the sound of music wafts out of pubs and clubs right across the city. I decided to interview local singer Wendy to discover what it is she loves about living in Melbourne.
There's like a need for me to perform. I suppose that being a musician, only part of the journey is writing the music, and performance is an art form in itself, so I have a need to actually follow through and release what I've created. I really honestly love Melbourne. Its beauty is not quite so apparent as somewhere like Sydney. Melbourne is a little more ancient and serpentine. There's something otherworldly about it. I like some of the little secret places, some of the less obvious places. I very much like the Botanical Gardens, and I wander through there a lot. And in the Botanical Gardens there's a beautiful temple called the Temple of the Winds that's a sort of neoclassic little round thing. It's lovely. And there's even a little grove just outside of the Botanical Gardens too that you can get to at night. It's not fenced off and it's beautiful. I like the city of Melbourne itself. Like I hang out in the actual city, I'll cycle in or whatever. On Saturdays I'll go out to the little cafes around De Grave Street and all those little alleyways and stuff like that, and you can wander your way through and you're in the heart of the city, but it's gentle and protected. The kind of music that I do, which is pretty eclectic and out there, it's amazing that I can gig every week. I don't think there'd be many places in the world where that would be the case.
For the trip up north, I'm going to be driving a 1979 Holden Kingswood. The Kingswood is an Australian icon. My old girl's just turned 23, which is 69 in car years, so let's just hope she can keep up with me. Now, everywhere else in Australia, roadside stops are known as rest areas. But oh no, not in Victoria. So don't go wasting your whole day there. First stop on my journey will be Echuca, on the banks of the mighty Murray River. Echuca used to be a bustling inland port, with numerous paddle steamers working up and down the river. By the early 1970s, the port was left derelict and unused. Luckily, the townsfolk had the foresight to start restoration of the old port. Today, the paddle steamers are making a comeback. Many old sunken boats are being raised and repaired to their former glory. Echuca now boasts the world's largest collection of paddle steamers and is a great example to rural towns how they can use their heritage to help establish tourism. And there's no better bloke to interview than Kevin Hutchison, a shipwright who has played a large role in the paddle steamer revival.
The things I like about Echuca is very quiet, laid-back town. Not really, it is a tourist town, but it doesn't seem to be all that noisy at night time, and safe to walk around and what have you, and people are friendly. Everyone's nice to get on with, and plenty of good eating places, catering for all sorts of tastes, whether you want a real slap up meal or just some fish and chips, it's all here. Well, my job here is to maintain and operate port's paddle boats. It's a 7-day-a-week job. Sometimes come down the middle of the night, rivers rising or falling, just to make sure they're all safe. And over the years we've restored 5 paddle boats, now on our 5th one now, the Hero. Pevensey really is my favourite. It's been part of my life since 1963. Oh, she's just a lovely old boat. She's got no vices as long as you look after it. And grumps and grown a bit now. The old gears are worn out a bit, but she still plods along quite nicely. The river is part of my life, has been all the time. Since I could ride a bike, I used to go in the river at Mumbulla and watch things going on there. The boats going by and things disappearing.
One Aussie custom I very much enjoy is beer o'clock. At the end of a hard day, a great way to get a feel for a place and find out what's worth doing is to drop into the local boozer for a beer and a chat. Okay, it's really just an excuse for a beer or two, but I'm sure you'll have no problem adjusting the local time. From Echuca, I'm going to head east towards the coast. On the way, I'll be travelling through Australia's high country, the Snowy Mountains. If you're camping, make sure you check out some of the designated campsites. At the campsite I visited, I was lucky to come across a mob of kangaroos resting from the midday sun. Now remember, these are wild animals, but they seem to show no concern for me or my camera. It surprises a lot of international visitors that Australia has snowfields. Alright, the season's short, but it does dispel the myth of Australia as just beaches and outback. I'm on my way to one of my favourite national parks, Mimosa Rocks near Tathra. You can get a campsite right on the beach and sometimes, as I experienced, have the whole place to yourself. It really is a beautiful area. The stopover also gave me a chance to practice my bushcraft skills. I'm always keen to learn more about how the Aborigines view the Aussie landscape. I've been invited to the Umbara Aboriginal Cultural Centre near Bermagui. The centre provides information on the local Aboriginals and also offers tours to their sacred sites. I joined the tour with guide Ronald Tighe. Ronald explained to me the importance of the sacred site, Mumbulla Mountain.
Mumbulla Mountain, the law comes from the mountain. This is where all the initiations were done. They put the red ochre on the young boys, took them up along the dreaming track, very different endurance stages, and that to see if they was fit enough to become men. As they come back down the track, they come to the sacred pool. They had the red ochre on them. They go through the sacred pool into the waterfall. As they come off, go through the other side, they washed ochre off and they became men. Some say that this was the proudest moment in a mother's life when you've seen their young boy go off with the elders to go along the dreaming track to become men. There are some places where I can't take you today because they're secret sacred places which we can't videotape. Today we'll be just showing you the waterfall because we can't show you the actual dreaming track itself and all that all sacred, secret stuff. Down here in the South Coast is very spiritual, and we want to bring people together. It's a reconciliation spot, and we want to come across and share it with the wider community, show them our culture, where we come from.
Next stop on my journey is Australia's capital city, Canberra. The story goes that when Australia passed its constitution in 1901, there was much arguing between Melbourne and Sydney for who should house the new federal government. Neither city would give an inch, and in the end, a brand new capital was built between the two, in the middle of nowhere, on a miserable old sheep station. One of the first things you notice about Canberra is just how tidy it is. I have to say it's the only place in Australia where I've seen one of these. But Canberra does have a seedy underbelly. It has some of the most liberal sex and drug laws in Australia. Wouldn't want any politicians getting in trouble, would we now? You could spend a week in Canberra just visiting its many exhibitions. There's the National Gallery, the War Museum, the National Museum, the National Science and Technology Centre, the Aboriginal Tent Embassy. Oh sorry, you're not meant to know about that one. Now when you visit the new Parliament House, go down the road a bit to the old Parliament House and have a look on its front lawns. Here you'll find the makeshift camp of the Aboriginal Tent Embassy, which was established close on 30 years ago, but is still not marked on any maps. I spoke with Darren Bloomfield, keeper of the Sacred Fire, about the importance of the embassy to the Aboriginal people.
The Aboriginal Tent Embassy is basically, this is the place for the grassroots, for all Aboriginal people, the front line, to come here and give their views on what their protest is to the government. This is a place they can come. All other countries have got their embassies everywhere around here, you know. So why can't we as an Aboriginal people have our own embassy so we can take our issues to them right in front of them on their doorstep? My role as a firekeeper is to protect at all times that sacred fire. That fire's been burning now for 4 years, and various other people have come in and looked after it for that 4 years, but it's now my role to actually do it. We take our fire to them because it represents peace and justice. It's for peace and justice. The end result I'd like to see actually is, after all reconciliation is accomplished, then come from reconciliation we can go into the treaty part. We have to have our sovereignty, because I don't believe that, you know, you can base a treaty on one nation's sovereignty and not two. Once treaty's all worked out and we're all happy with what's going on, we can just pack this place up and we can go home. Fire can burn out, we'll be all happy, we'll live together, you know, shaking hands, black and white fellas. I think 30 years is a long time to be sitting here waiting for a few answers of people that's sitting right in front of us, you know.
Australia's biggest and most recognisable city is Sydney, and that's where I'm heading. I've been staying with the Nomads chain of backpacking hostels, and I've found their staff to be a great wealth of information. Richard Madrill, General Manager of the Sydney hostel, is a fine example of this. He had me cruising the harbour, up in a plane over the city. He even tried organising a meeting with a drag queen for me. But more about that later.
Someone who's here for 1 or 2 days, I generally point them in the direction of the Sydney Harbour Explorer, basically straight away. It runs every day, and it's a continuous trip around the harbour, but you can hop on, you can hop off. That's probably an excellent way to spend a day in Sydney for somebody who hasn't got a lot of time. Get to see the harbour, get to see some retail, get to see a zoo, get to see fantastic scenery. Sydney Harbour is absolutely spectacular.
Richard then suggested going somewhere I would never have even considered visiting. One of Sydney's best kept secrets and a must-see for lovers of fine seafood.
The Sydney Fish Market, it's broken up into 2 categories. When we get over there, we'll actually go into the wholesale side of the fish market, where all the retailers purchase day by day for the outlets throughout Sydney, the north coast, the south coast. The fish market floor opens at 5:30, and then we go on to the retailers at 7 a.m, and they are selling for the duration of the day. The seafood product is fantastic, it's well priced, it's very fresh, it's a lot of it. People can't believe that you can have 10 varieties of prawns and 4 varieties of crabs. So it's a main destination Monday to Friday for tourists to get down there and purchase some prawns and some oysters and grab a bottle of wine and grab a seat out on the wharf and check out the pelicans and watch seagulls fly by and just be a part of something that's unique to the world, in actual fact.
One unique aspect of Sydney's nightlife is its drag performers. The annual gay and lesbian Mardi Gras has helped spawn this mini industry. I decided to interview one of its best.
Miss Vanity Fair!
I had no aspirations to become a drag queen as a child, but when I think about it and look back, my life was in preparation to be a drag queen. Like, I always loved jewels and I always loved glamour and glitz and wigs and shoes and everything feminine I love. So it's very appropriate for me to be a drag queen. Even before you get on stage, you've spent an hour and a half putting makeup on. Even before that, you have to make your costume. And most men don't fit into off-the-rack women's clothing. I'm fine because I'm size 10, I'm size, size 8 in the waist. I'm lucky. There are people in there with size 16 feet and, and they're like built like truck drivers but still want to look feminine. Sydney drag is extremely competitive for a number of reasons because there's so many of us. There's, say, 40 working drag queens in Sydney. It's like a career here. You really make a living. You can work, your normal job, but do it as a drag queen. You don't have to work during the day. You can actually work 5 nights a week, which is what I do. Drag is bitchy, but that's one side of it. The other side of it is the fact that we are the minority, and we are a minority group. Not only drag queens, but gay and lesbians in general. And, we may hate each other, because we're in competition with each other, but at the same time, as soon as one falls, there's 40 of us there to pick each other up. And it's a beautiful community, but it's not only 40, it's the entire gay community works as a family because we've had to. You know, a lot of us have had troubles in our family life because of, you know, the way we were born. And, you know, it's nice, it's beautiful to be a part of a community that is so, in such a big city where no one even speaks to each other hardly. You know, you can walk down the street in Oxford Street and you know everyone. You walk out into a club, you know, on your own and you know everyone and everyone knows you, and it's a beautiful place.
One place I really love in Sydney is Bondi Beach. It has a certain energy about it. To me, it represents everything good about Australia. It's a place where you can look over that wide expanse of beach and dream your dreams, and know that one day, in this part of the world, they could come true. From Sydney, I head up the coast towards Cairns Harbour, a beautiful location where rainforest meets the sea. The great thing about travelling the East Coast is that you can pull in off the highway at any number of small towns and find your own little piece of paradise. Next stop, Byron Bay, a mecca for young backpackers. Byron was originally made popular by surfers in the 60s. Then came the hippies, and now it's full of well-heeled baby boomers, who I suppose are really just the original surfers and hippies, with a bit more cash. Anyway, Byron still has an alternative vibe to it, and with its sheltered beach, really has been blessed with natural beauty. One of the things I enjoy doing in Byron Bay is going on a pub crawl. It has 3 pubs all within staggering distance. The Beach Hotel, up by the beach, the Great Northern, in the middle of town, and right next to the railway station, literally, the Railway Hotel. Alright, the names don't show much imagination, but the great thing is, most nights of the week you can catch a variety of top musicians entertaining the masses. Byron Bay is home to many creative people, from artists to filmmakers, so I decided to interview John Dolson, an artist who puts a different spin on beachcombing.
People get profoundly influenced by being in this environment, and I know that that's happened for myself in my own artwork. I was painting pictures for something like 17 years, including for the first few years while I was in Byron Bay, but I just had a very major shift in the materials that I work with when I started to discover these plastics along the beaches here, and I've since turned that into an art form. I just get excited when I see some of these plastic pieces because I just find them really interesting, and I see colours that I have never seen before, and that's a really interesting thing to discover, that what nature's doing to it, how it weathers and tarnishes the edges and bleaches and does different things like that. I've certainly seen colours that I've never seen before, and that's coming from a painter of 17 years experience working with a palette where you can make up any colour you like. This region, the Shire of Byron Bay, has as its population the largest amount of university graduate, standard graduates outside of any major city in Australia. I feel that the reason why Byron Bay attracts so many people who are artistic and also intelligent to the area is just the location, the pure location, the nature here. It's a very high energy, it's renowned as being in a high energy field area, in that it's situated where some of the magnetic ley lines are crossing under the earth. I go for a coffee in the morning and I can sit at a table with people that I know who are glass blowers, who are other painters, who are writers, who are musicians, and we've got one of Australia's richest men that sits and has coffee with us every morning. This is the sort of cross-section. We've got people who are sitting at the table, they're on the dole, and there's an acceptance of all of this, and I find that that's something very special about Byron Bay.
From Byron Bay, I'm going to head west, up into the hills to visit the small village of Nimbin. Nimbin used to be a one-street dairy farm community. In the early 70s, it played host to the Aquarius Festival, which celebrated alternative lifestyles. Many of the hippies stayed on, and now its main industry is a little bit different from milking cows. Grass has always been big in Nimbin, first to feed the cows, and now in the form of the annual Mardi Gras festival. The aim of the festival is to bring about law reform with regard to marijuana use. But Nimbin isn't just about dope and mung beans. I spoke with Neil Pike, one of the original hippies who moved to Nimbin back in the 70s.
I've been a musician all my life, or all my adult life, and in the 80s I was part of a pop group that got on television and put out the first independent CD in the world and got $35,000 non-recoverable cash advance from Warner Brothers and all sorts of other wonderful things, and never actually kind of became famous or never actually cracked the golden egg in any real terms, but got close enough to see that it wasn't really where I was at anyway. And since that time I've just concentrated on doing my own thing, and using computers and the internet I've managed to reach an overseas audience, a small but dedicated overseas audience that like what I do, because I long ago recognised that the music I genuinely liked to play wasn't particularly commercial, and that maybe 0.02% of the population genuinely loved it, but to the rest of the planet it was just like bad vegetarian restaurant music, the factors that really make Nimbin such a unique and wonderful place to live. Firstly, you've got definitely one of the most amazing, beautiful, natural environments on the globe. You'd have to travel a long way in Europe or America to find a wilderness that's as beautiful and as intact as some of the areas around here. But then, as well as that, you've got this population that I think probably you could say 60% of the whole area of this part of northern New South Wales, not just Nimbin, but the whole area, would describe themselves as alternative in one way or another. The common ground is that everybody's looking for something a little bit different to what living in the city offers, right? The really important thing and relevant thing I think about Nimbin to greater society, to the mainstream society, is that has been and continues to be a place where we sort of test drive alternative lifestyles. And those ones that have worked, the ideas, philosophies and lifestyles that we have tried that have been relevant, have very, very quickly been adopted by the mainstream, basically. And, no acknowledgement or thanks whatsoever, I might add, But, the environment movement's a damn good example of that, was that when we started screaming about the Terrania forest and the nightcap forest being under threat, we would just seriously downplayed as mad hippies, and yet 20 years later, it's a national park, and they have editorials in the local newspaper about what a good and wonderful thing it was that we held the blockade. You don't find the real Nimbin on the streets, and what you see on the streets in Nimbin is, pretty much what you'd find in the streets of Amsterdam or the streets of King's Cross. It's a free-range psychiatric clinic, no questions asked. We like it, it keeps the real estate lobby at bay, but if you really want to see Nimbin, you have to get out of the town itself and probably meet a local and get to know what's really happening in the hills, and that's where the true Nimbin is.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed the journey up the east coast. In the next episode, I travel the Queensland leg of the coast. So pack your swimmers, as the weather's going to get warm. See you later.